You may think of Excel as simply a fancy calculator, but what makes it such an incredible tool is that rather than simply doing a calculation with a series of numbers, you can refer to the location of a number. So instead of just saying 4 plus 5 equals 9, you can say B2 plus C2 equals the total of whatever's in those cells. And as the cells change, so too does the answer. This ability to use cell references or the location of a cell by referring to its column letter and row number is at the heart of Excel's power. But you might not realize that there's actually two ways to refer to a cell, and that the one you're using actually doesn't refer to a specific location. It's what's called a relative reference. Let me show you what I mean. Here we have an order for a bunch of different grocery products, each with a different unit cost and a different total units in columns B and C. And I want to calculate a couple of things about this order. We'll start with the total order cost. This is fairly straightforward. We'll write a simple formula where I multiply the unit costs in B5 times the total units in C5, and I get a formula B5 times C5. For my total with tax, I now want to take that total value and multiply it by my tax rate in F1. In this case, we'll say this cell equals the total order plus the total order times my tax rate in F1. So D5 plus D5 times F1. Seems like everything's working just fine, and of course we don't want to do this every time for every cell, so we'll select both of these cells, and using our autofill handle in the bottom right, a quick double click should copy those formulas down each column. But wait a minute, something went wrong. Our totals column looks great, but our tax column is all messed up. What happened? Well, when you use a simple cell reference like we always do, usually just by clicking on the cell you want to refer to, you're actually using what's known as a relative reference, meaning relative to the cell you're calculating from. Think of it like giving directions. If I say you can get to my house by going 4 blocks south and 7 blocks east, where you start is going to affect where you finish. Let's take a closer look at the formulas that we just created, and the total order column worked as we might expect. It didn't actually copy B5 times C5, it copied the relative references of 1 to the left times 2 to the left, or B6 times C6, B7 times C7, etc. Always the relative position based on where we start. However, that also occurred for the tax rate. We wanted the total order value to change. D5 should update to D6 and D7, etc., but the tax rate changed as well, from F1 to F2, F3, and in cell E8 we see this value error. That's because it turned to F4, which was this header word, and that threw everything off. Instead, we want to always go to the same place regardless of where we start, like giving an exact address in directions, like go to my house at 123 Main Street, instead of the relative directions of 2 blocks up and 5 to the left. In Excel, the way we use an exact, or what's known as an absolute reference for a cell like F1, is to add dollar signs to the reference. Dollar signs lock the column and the row in place, so it will always refer to the same cell regardless of where you start from. Let's try to fix our total with tax column. We're going to go back to this formula, and rather than referencing the relative position of F1 as 1 to the right and 4 up, we're going to add dollar signs, so make it $F, $1. Now I'm referring to the exact position of that tax rate. And when I select that cell and copy it down, we see the function update correctly. Let's try the same thing for our total with discount column. Here I want to take my total tax rate in cell E5, and I want to subtract E5 times our discount rate in F2, but I always want to refer to that discount rate. That needs to be an absolute reference.
A keyboard shortcut to help here is the Function 4 or F4 key on your keyboard. If you're on a Mac, you may have to hold down the FN button. That automatically adds dollar signs into whatever your cursor is in. So if I click in a different reference and hit the F4 key, you see it adds dollar signs here, and it actually toggles through all our different reference types, from relative to absolute, and then mixed references where just the row is locked, just the column is locked, or back to relative. Because we always want to refer to the discount rate in F2, we'll leave it as an absolute reference, and when I copy that function down, we see that we always get F2 as our discount rate. One more thing to keep in mind is that concept of a mixed reference. It's more rarely used, but occasionally I might want to have one formula that I copy both down and across, and in this rare instance, I might use a mixed reference. For example, here, I want to know how many boxes I need for boxes that can only take 5 units or 10 units for the different unit options. In this case, I want to make a formula that as I copy down always refers to the same number of boxes but different units, and as I copy across refers to different box types but the same unit. So in the first cell, G5, we'll write the formula equals C5 as a mixed reference where we only lock the column and a $sign C5 divided by the number of boxes in G3, but only where the row is locked, so G $sign 3. This one formula, as I copy both down and across, will always reference the right cells.
There you have it. Absolute versus relative references. This is a foundational principle in Excel that, if you aren't aware of, can bite you in the tuchus. Because it's going to seem fine in that first formula, but everything goes haywire when you copy it down to the other rows or columns. Remember, your absolute versus relative references will always help you save hours of heartache. See you next time.